Week 1, Day 3 here at the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the European region. Colento just took down Boar Control with a 2-1 score, moved up to 2-0, and Boar Control down to 0-2. Speaking of twos, we're on our second match now. Viper versus Bozzzton, both of them looking to avoid 0-2 as a start to this one. Viper was bested by Colento in his first match,
yes.
And then Bozzzton was... I'm sorry. Viper lost to Tice, that's right. And then Bozzzton lost to Colento. I had it backwards.
Right,
that's
okay, yes, yeah.
I'm not terrible, I'm joined by Derek.
Viper
and welcome.
The first one. Either way, Viper got destroyed by a mage in
Yes.
the first series that we had here in European Grandmasters. And of the two rogues that have been brought here in Week 1 Europe by Viper and Hunter Ace, the two finalists that we had in this year's Hearthstone World Championship, or last year's, I suppose I should say, they've been having mixed results. Hunter Ace was looking very, very powerful on his one, but I would say that was in no small part due to his fantastic piloting of the deck. And Viper, while he didn't do anything especially wrong, we disagreed with one or two minor decisions in his gameplay. He really didn't get to play much Hearthstone against Tice, to be honest.
Yeah, he tweeted out about our comment on
Yes.
the tempo play that you and I were looking at, what eventually bested him in that game, and he talked about the longevity and being able to beat a Conjurer's Calling on a 5-drop, not being able to do it on a Giant. So I liked his explanation of it. I still think that spot might have been one to deviate, but it's really the story that we saw from Orange yesterday for Viper, was that he just didn't really get to play that much Hearthstone. He didn't have early pressure, he didn't have the key cards to dig into the deck and find what was necessary to win, and I'm hoping to see something a little bit different from him in this series here, because when you don't draw the right cards, your deck looks very wrong, but that's why you put the right cards in. Viper's a very experienced rogue player, and with the right cards, he can just about dismantle anybody that's out there.
He absolutely can. He plays rogue at the highest level and has done for the vast history of Hearthstone. But against Bozzzton on his Bomb Warrior, might have his work cut out for him. It's not the best anti-rogue list, it has to be said. There's a couple of cards in there that really are not meant for the matchup. Obviously, Archivist Elysiana, Super Collider can struggle to get a lot of value when it's mainly just lackeys that you have to be afraid of. And even just in the early game that we see there, Omega Assembly, which some players like Casey in particular have been cutting, is not the most powerful against Rogue because it takes a little while before it's fully activated at 10 mana.
Yeah, I found it often I'm casting it early in the game, and you might have noticed that QR code in the top right. That's a handy-dandy active scanner. So if you don't like copy and pasting deck codes from Twitter, go ahead and use that one. You just go back in the VOD, scan it, you got your deck right there. So here we go. Game number 1, Viper versus Bozzzton. Bozzzton, a fantastic opening hand. As we heard Casey kind of talking about the importance of 1-drops in Bomb Warrior,
yep.
He equated the deck to even Paladin, where you just kind of play stuff and hit him in the face.
Yeah. And also, speaking of the secondary effect of Town Crier, not only functioning just as a 1-drop, but also the fact that it draws a rush minion. Yesterday, after we were done casting Zorkthar, obviously member of Nordavind and I'm going to say servant of Hunter Ace. He will not like that one, but it more or less describes his position. He was saying that against Rogue, if you're not hitting the Militia Commander on turn 4 or even turn 3, you are in big trouble in their early game. You can find yourself losing to, obviously, the Evil Miscreant we see there. Even just something like a Dread Corsair or a Life's Drinker sticking on board can make it very difficult. And therefore, he was a big proponent of going for double Town Crier, even though you only played the 3 rushes.
Very different story for Viper in this opening hand, where I believe in his first series, he did not draw Evil Miscreant at all in the first 4 or 5 turns of the game. And here, he's got it right away. And these are the kinds of hands that Rogue really uses to leverage a position. But, you just talked about Militia Commander and what that does against Evil Miscreant. I think that's such an important thing to note that Bozzzton has coin in this one, because it means that the Evil Miscreant's coming down directly on curve instead of ahead with coin.
Yep.
And then also means that Bozzzton gets to check it right away. So there's no Shadow Step shenanigans, no waggle pick, situations you get in where you have a 50-50. I hope they bounce the Dread Corsair instead of the Evil Miscreant. That manipulation is gone if you have the Militia Commander.
And it's worth saying as well that in this double Shadow Step list which Viper has, in his primary deck, which again in Specialist you have to queue up first before you can switch over to your secondary or tertiary, he does have not too many cards which are that good with the Shadow Step. The Evil Miscreant is kind of as good as it gets, outside of obviously Leroy in the late game for that 6 extra burst damage. So not being able to find, as you said, that Shadow Step for the Evil Miscreant early on to get that value rolling could hurt him later on when he starts drawing those dead cards like Shadow Step.
I look at Steel Rager and I'm like, bootleg Militia Commander.
That is one bootleg Militia Commander.
Takes the Devastator, obviously. And if Viper doesn't have a play that gets on board here, Bozzzton, I think, is definitely eyeing the Coin Omega Devastator to start generating tempo and damage to pressure Viper down.
Yes. This is what Bomb Warrior does. We've been learning this more and more as the weekend has passed by, is that it obviously functions as a control deck, especially in the mirror. You have to take it to the late game in order to be delivering lethal. But Casey just kind of gave us a masterclass in the fact that you can just curve out, you can just hit your opponent, and you will probably win if you do that.
Now the old Elec into Clockwork with 1-drops and things to back it up. It's a good start.
Oh, don't forget the Blastmaster Boom on 7 every game. Do not forget that, my friend. A key component.
And so for Bozzzton here, kind of an interesting spot. I like the line that Viper's taken here, where he's trying to get Bozzzton, I think, to get something in play so that his preparation isn't just wasted on an Evil Miscreant. Wants to use it, Evil Miscreant. If he finds a spell lackey, maybe he can get something, and if not, he can eviscerate and generate some tempo.
Yeah, I think it's also the fact that, like you said, Eviscerate doesn't want to go on the 1-drop because it's a 1-drop, it's not particularly threatening. Also because he'd rather send it to the face, if possible. With a hand that's Leroy, Life Drinker, and Eviscerate, even at this point, he is definitely going to be looking at trying to launch as much damage to face as possible. We can clearly see that that is going to be very difficult for him to achieve with the unbelievable curve that Bozzzton has accumulated thus far.
Very nice draw for Viper.
Gorgeous, yeah.
And so Viper needs to be interested in taking out the 1-3 in this spot. And the reason is not only a nod to future turns on Dynomatic, but also to the fact that this is now gonna wait on the fact that Ziliax, for instance, isn't necessarily going to be able to be magnetic onto this card. You know, your opponent still has another Town Cry in their deck. As they move into that turn 5, the threat of Ziliax, I think getting major tempo on a rogue is a devastating prospect.
Yeah, nice. The Devastator.
Yeah. I think that Bozzzton's going to be on a weapons project here, though.
Really?
I could be wrong. I mean, I kill Evil Miscreants.
Yeah.
That card is too good, and when it gets bounced, it feels bad.
So if Viper had a Shadow Step, would he have instantly Shadow Stepped it back to his hand?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I haven't seen Viper pilot this deck enough, or rather, I haven't seen him have Evil Miscreant enough to be able to determine how I think he's going to play in that situation. I think Bozzzton is reading into it as if he had Shadow Step, he therefore would have played it, which I think is a very strong read to make. I
think that's a component of it. The other aspect of it is obviously that there are 2 Deadly Poisons in Viper's deck. There's also 2 Waggle Picks in his deck, and hitting the Waggle Pick with the Weapons Project to overwrite the weapon and therefore give them a much inferior 2-3 weapon is pretty crucial, actually, to stop the burst, especially when, of course, later on in the game, they can go Leroy, break the Waggle Pick, Leroy again for an absurd amount of burst damage.
You're also losing the chip damage you get to face if you go with Weapons Project. You forego development to avoid a disastrous scenario of your opponent having a Shadow Step. I think this is wiser than what I would have done from Bozzzton. It's just, I look at it and I go, minions are scary, and I want to kill them.
Yeah. And I fully agree. I think that's one of the weakest aspects of my play is over-eagerness to clear off minions when it's not always necessary. Just developing your own side of the board is often perfectly good enough.
Whoa. Another preparation is good.
Yeah, I think I like that. There's a lot of draws that make that very powerful. And you know, his hand's doing enough stuff for the moment.
That Paggle! Ooh. There's a lot of stuff on board here that absorbs Dynomatic damage as well, so...
Dare I say, that is a premium 2-drop to have found there.
Yeah, that's really good right now. At the start of Viper's turn, 50% chance to draw a card. An extra card. It just cuts your normal draw, and you're like, you now only have a 50% chance to draw a card. I'm like,
wait a second.
Why is this a 0-4?
Sorry, gone fishing.
Out for the day. Yeah, like if Boston's going to Dynomatic here, he's got to trade first. So my curiosity is Ziliax ever appropriate here to try to generate some tempo and use these little minions to pick off the 1/1s on the side?
Oh, Ziliax when you're at full health against Rogue is miserable.
Right. I think
That's too bad.
in my head, I'm going to try to do anything I can to not do that.
Yes.
And honestly, I think Super Collider is a pretty reasonable option here too. Like, you know, I thought Bozzzton was eyeing this, but in my head it might have just been a little too weak, but it makes a lot of sense. It really hurts Viper's ability to develop in this spot. He gets to keep a 2/1 around and start working on the board pressure to eventually get to a strong Dynomatic turn.
I think this is great forward thinking by Bozzzton, because though Super Collider is undeniably not the strongest turn immediately, it didn't do the most amount of stuff on that turn. Having 2 activations of the Super Collider equipped, preloaded for next turn will just make this a breeze in terms of clearing the board.
You've also got a couple of weapons projects in your hand, so you need to get weapons swinging
Good
as
point.
well.
Good point.
Very big heed to the fact that he's got those cards in hand.
Yeah. But that does also mean that Viper also knows that the weakness of his Waggle Pick is weapons project. Even though he doesn't know if it's in hand for Bozzzton, he could seize this opportunity to get the Waggle Pick online and say, if you want to destroy this, you're also going to have to destroy your own Super Collider to kind of get more of that symmetrical effect for him there. It's just something to consider, but at the same time, while he has all these high health, low impact minions on the board, he also wants to develop the rest of his minions as well, so that they are protected by Dynomatic. Protected from Dynomatic, sorry.
Looking like SI7 agent.
I think that's what he's going for. Just trying to get the most amount of stuff on board whilst it can't be cleared by Dynomatic.
He wants to preserve life total here as well. Says him at 19, don't take the 2, deal 1 less damage instead.
So much weapon destruction now for Bozzzton, but it's not really what he needs in this instance.
So if you attack SI7 agent,
Yeah.
it runs into the evil miscreant.
So that's 1 health, 2 health. So that's 3,
7
4,
total
7.
health.
Yes.
That's got to
no,
be
8.
certain.
8, I think. 8 health altogether on the board.
Yes, 8 health altogether. That's got to be good enough to start Dynamatics.
You've got the follow-up of another Dynomatic. It's definitely worth considering. Because it kills all the... Like, what likely happens is the SI7 agent dies and the 2/1 dies, which is a lot of damage off the board at the very least. The Nat Pagel obviously probably survives.
I wonder if there's ever any merit to using Dynomatic first. I think there's too many outcomes to calculate there.
Yeah, I don't think so, because you don't want to hit twice on the SI7 agent or anything like that. I think this is fine. Because you're never going to get a better hit with random outcomes. Not perfect, but cleared off most of the damage there. And so now for Viper, this is where things start to get really interesting, because right back to the start of the game, if you remember, he had the opportunity to prep this Miscreant, which I think a lot of players would have gone for just to get that minion on the board. He's still got that Eviscerate in hand now, which can be launched phase. This is the kind of forward thinking that it takes to pilot Rogue versus Warrior. You need every single point of damage that you can get in order to bridge the gap that you need with that much armor that they have.
Viper in a tough spot, though. You know, I am thinking about desperate times and desperate measures. I'm curious if there's a prep walk the plank.
I mean, I was looking at Waggle Pick, prep, walk the plank, eviscerate face. Like, just start getting everything through to face you possibly can. It's a pretty heads-up play, but it means next turn, if your weapon isn't destroyed, you can go Leroy, Waggle Pick, Leroy again.
My one worry for the Waggle Pick play and using prep walk the plank is that you run directly into Dynomatic Ziliax. I'm sorry, Dynomatic and Weapons Project.
Okay.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
He's doing it. I love it. I think this is
going
what he needs to go for. This is not his tertiary deck which runs the value cards. This is a lean, mean rogue that gets all the damage through to face and just tries to end it quickly.
This is also a heat to a Myra's draw.
Good point. Yeah. Very good point. Which is, even though you may say it's unlikely to happen, Viper is saying, I'm just going to pretend it's the top card in my deck, because or right at the top of my deck, because if it's not, I'm losing no matter what. So let's just play as if that's my next card.
Shadow Step would be good as well.
Fine, yeah. Anything that just gets him more damage here.
For Bozzzton, though, this is, to me, this is face up. Dynamatic Weapons Project.
Yeah, no more tricks to be played here, and, you know, it should work out pretty well for him.
You set up with a Ziliax. You could also, I guess you could use the Super Collider on the 1/1, Harrison Jones, to send the Paggle back to hand, and then Hero Power for 2 extra health. Save the Dynamatic for afterwards, but I feel like they want the Dynamatic down right now.
Yeah, and well, actually what I was looking at was you could go Ziliax Weapons Project, where you go Weapons Project first to just... Oh no, because then you maybe bounce the 1/1 back to hand. Yeah, it's close. Because I wanted to see if you could get the Ziliax to attack into a 0-attack minion, so it heals and retains the Divine Shield.
I think he's
But
interested.
I think I agree that denying their value is too important.
I think he's very interested also in...
Magnetizing.
Yeah, and sending the magnetic.
Okay. Yeah.
A little surprised
agree.
that he did... Oh, boy.
Ooh, that's important.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 damage over the next 2 turns for Viper here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can see this Deadly Poison is only going to be adding 2 damage ever.
I wonder.
But from where he's sat, maybe this gives him the opportunity to get that little bit of extra damage.
I was a little surprised that Bozzzton didn't just swing with a Super Collider.
Oh, what, just swing face with it and then...
Yeah, have a 3-charge weapon.
He's got so many charges, though. Does the game ever go on for 5 more turns?
Probably not.
Like, I think he's probably just gained himself 1 extra damage here. And Viper as well, it looked like he was just, going for the face here, which I personally like a lot, because if they have Ziliax in hand, I think he's accepting you never win it.
You done so.
Yeah. So you just got to pretend they don't have it, and then maybe you have a chance. Because if he's trading into the minions, maybe they don't even need Ziliax to be able to pull the game back here.
Bozzzton's got to think about exactly Leroy Shadow Step. And he has that covered with Harrison Jones. So he gets to draw 2 cards, wipe away that damage, trade over the Firefly. I'm sorry, the Life Drinker here.
Yeah.
And Shield Block pulls him out of range of Leroy Shadow Step, as well as just Armor Up pulls him out of range, because there will be no dagger equipped for Viper.
Good point. 1 mana short. Yeah, I mean, I think he will have his opponent now, like the card, he will be able to have hand-read that is either Leroy or Shadow Step, or maybe Prep, just one of the... Or even Shadow Step would have already been played. Like, I think you can probably put it down to exactly Leroy.
Viper having a tough one here in game number 1. It was not in the cards this game.
Yeah, it's just so often what happens. Raiding Party.
Okay, so...
That's interesting.
A Breath of Life, perhaps, but, you know, I'm just looking at Bozzzton's hand.
Yeah, he does run Greenskin, which a lot of the lists have cut, which maybe gives him a little bit of extra juice with the 2nd Waggle Pick in his deck.
So the Weapons Project waiting.
I wonder.
Yes, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. Sorry, I should say from Viper's perspective.
Yeah.
He is hoping that he will be able to get there from that. Obviously, Bozzzton has the answer. And so for Viper, the question then becomes, do I ever win if I Leroy here, or do I just need to dagger attack the 3/1, I guess, or maybe face, and hope that I can activate it with something less valuable next turn?
You might be... I'm curious if you ever just cast it straight up as well.
That
Thin the deck for Amira's.
Okay.
Must choose soon.
Oh, that feels so rough.
You got to do something. Bozzzton's got 6 cards left in board.
There it is.
So I think that this variant of the all-in has, you know, a pretty similar effectiveness to just thinning the deck and hoping you draw Myers as well. But oh, that's why you couldn't just thin. He only has 1 pirate left.
Yeah.
And this Ziliax is very likely to end the game.
Yeah, how much is that? 6 immediate healing, and then obviously you could just you save the
Slap
weapons
down the
project
clockwork.
for the Waggle Pick. Yeah, just get stuff on board here. Anything's fine that puts stats in play and tries to end the game before they find Myra's. Because the one thing you're afraid of is if they go Myra's and are able to make like a 16-16 Edwin that maybe you don't have the answer to and you can't deliver lethal. Like, it's extremely fringe scenarios like that.
Unity, precision.
Ziliax also just delivers the damage face. Important to note.
Yeah, and I like that a lot. Getting this damage through to face is important. Setting up, I think, just 2-turn lethal here pretty handily.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of just armoring here. You don't really lose much by armoring, but you don't lose much by playing the Militia Commander as well. I think,
you
like,
have
what's the disaster?
so much health. You have the disaster is that they make a huge board with an Edwin. Actually, no, you just have lethal. There is no disaster. He cannot lose from it.
Is there a weird prep Myra spot you could lose in? That's the only thing I was thinking of.
Like, it's like prep, miscreant, lackey into vanish, and then you lose the Zilliax magnetization.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's like, yeah, it's an incredibly unlikely scenario, and it does not happen here. So Bozzzton will be taking the game up 1-0. Given that they were both on their primary decks, obviously the first game of the series, it makes sense to me that Bozzzton was coming out on top. I think this version for Viper is a little bit too stripped down, mainly meant for some of the aggro matchups. Obviously the Rogue Mirror, it's pretty good in, but he does have now the opportunity, of course, to switch over to his tertiary deck, which looks to me to be much more teched to deal with that warrior.
Indeed, because the specialist here, Viper, you know, obviously he's going to still be on Rogue, but his tertiary deck in games 2 and 3, he's able to add Harrison Jones, High Spare and Togwaggle, Chef Nomi, and take out a Southsea deckhand, an SI7 agent, and a Walk the Plank. So that's a very big difference.
Huge swap
He's getting in this one. So we're going to find out when we go to, after we come back from a break, if Viper's tertiary deck can start getting it done with a bit more value packed at the top end.
Each teammate I'm calling has stories. This tale's about riches and glories. Deep down in the earth, a king dreams of rebirth and refilling his gold inventories. Such a shame to have lost all that treasure. Join up, be a kobold of leisure. The cards now be calling. Someone new, no more stalling. And we next will be taking her measure.
My name is Tom Val, my handle is Viper. My username is just one of those boring stories where it's a 12, 13-year-old kid makes his first WoW account basically. You gotta pick a username, taken. Is this Viper taken? Oh, Viper's possible, nice, okay, whatever. It's a generic name, it's fine. And then I just stick to it. Being Grandmasters means that I'm one of the top 16 players in Europe basically, right? Which is really worth a lot for me because I always want to be the best, I always want to be competitive, I always want to do well. That's just who I am. I always try to be open-minded. I try to test whatever decks are good. January in 2016 it was, I think. I had almost 3K games in a month, just playing Aggro Shaman and Miracle. I think I've also played an unhealthy amount of J Druid and the Dragon Combo Priest after that. I just love those powerful decks, I guess. Being second at Worlds, it's such a crazy feeling and I'm not sure if I really realize it at this point. Now I'm just looking forward to Grandmasters, I'm looking forward to playing well. I want to play on the big stage, I'm really looking forward to that.
My name is Elias Sibelius and I go under Bozzzton. My username actually comes from my cat. His name is Bozzzton, so I just took that and made it a bit cooler with the triple Z. So yeah, shout out to him. When I got the confirmation that I was in Grandmaster, I was overwhelmed by emotions. Even though I haven't had the first place big tournament win, they actually appreciate that consistency and what I've been working for the last couple of years. I'm very good at focusing on a specific thing and keeping myself ready for the situation. Yeah, and my games and stuff like that. My favorite memory is still my first DreamHack. I remember facing Super JJ. I was a total newcomer, so it was very big for me to just be there and just realizing that I could actually beat all these players, and it was very cool. My personal goals for this year is I want to qualify for the playoff. Of course, I want to go to the global finals. That's I think everyone's goal, but I want to be one of the best players. I will try my best to get there for sure.
We are back with Hearthstone Grandmasters here for the European region, our second match of the day and our third day of the week, which is our final day of the first week here of the inaugural season of Hearthstone Grandmasters. I'm Matt Averell, joined by Derek Brown, and fun fact, Bozzzton with the win here over Viper in the Game 1 win. That's the first game win that either of these players have taken in Grandmasters.
Yeah, it's been a pretty unfortunate couple of series for both of them. Like we saw in the first game ever here in the Europe Grandmasters, Viper just kind of got absolutely taken to town by Tice. it was a bit of a destruction. And that was our first taste of the power of Mage that we saw here. And yet still to take a game in the Grandmasters format. Hopefully this isn't laying out the pathway for how he will be performing for the rest of Grandmasters after having had such a fantastic year last year.
Well, different story. Is this Viper's first coin?
I have not been tracking those stats, I've got to be perfectly honest.
I'm going to put in an official request for coin games for Viper on this one. In his series against Tice, it was just an unfortunate series of events. He never had anything going, he didn't find his key cards, and he just got beat up. So here for Bozzzton, he's sticking to the primary deck. His first deck that's loaded up is the one that's meant to fight against Viper here for Specialist. You build a deck, and then you build 2 decks that are up to 5 cards different from that first initial deck that you bring. So obviously they're all going to be Warrior in that regard. It's a single class format. For Viper, he's removed a Southsea Deckhand, an SI7 agent, and a Walk the Plank, and in their place, a Harrison Jones, a Heist Baron Togwaggle, and a Chef Nomi. The Harrison Jones I really like because against Weapons Project, if they Weapons Project your Waggle pick, you get to answer back by drawing 2 fresh cards.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy card to be taking in against the Warrior. The interesting thing is that for Viper, compared to the other rogue in the European Grandmasters in Hunter Ace, he went even further with his tertiary deck. He also put in 2 copies of Hench Clan Burglar for that little bit of extra value against the Warriors, whereas Viper is only opting to swap out 3 of the cards. You can swap up to 5 cards between each of your secondary and tertiary decks. So a little bit closer to his primary list, which it has to be said was looking fairly miserable in the first game.
And honestly, I kind of like the calls from both players, where for Hunter Ace, it's a very dedicated plan. You know what it's there for, you know exactly what we're going to use it against. Why not swap out some weaker cards for a 4/3 that can, you know, draw you a random effect?
Yeah.
For Viper, I imagine part of the thinking was flexibility. If you swap into a deck that uses these 3 cards, maybe it still wants the life triggers. Maybe you're getting pressured on life total a little bit more, and you don't necessarily believe you need the extra value. I think it's an interesting perspective from both of them, where I think Viper tries to be more well-rounded in the deck building, whereas Hunter Ace, I think, will more often try to target something and go in and really punish you for making a choice.
It's true. And Viper's primary deck list is also a little bit more equipped to deal with Warriors than Hunter Ace's was. It's not running any copies of Sap, which I believe Hunter Ace was running one of. It's not running any of the Bloodsail Corsairs either, which are not especially powerful against Warrior.
Confirmation, this is Viper's first coin. And
really?
Yes, and this...
Okay, that's starting to make sense then.
These upcoming turns are looking very good for Viper.
You always hate to see that. You draw... This always happens to me. You always draw the prep the turn after you go coin raiding party.
I'm not too worried about it.
I mean, it's fine. His hand is still looking fantastico.
Just that one extra flare at the end. It's more than fantastic.
It is. This is greater than fantastic. Fantastico is fantastic plus in the scale.
Yeah, I think his play in here is A+ as well.
Because just look at it. He can go, obviously, in the next couple turns, Waggle Pick, double Dread Corsair. He can start getting that damage in with Leroy. And even if all of that goes horrendously wrong, the board is cleared by Bozzzton, the armor is racked up still, he's got prep into Myra's, and then he's got Nomi, which he should hopefully be finding, which is now substituted into his deck, which he can then go Chef Nomi Shadow Step, Chef Nomi Shadow Step.
Yeah, I'm looking at that Myra's in this hand for Viper. I am curious at what stage you're unleashing the Myras. You know, typically speaking, the ideal scenario is like the sooner the better.
Right.
You can't always spend your cards that way, and sometimes you need a little bit extra information or security in the Myras and stable element to let it rip that early.
Yeah.
So something I think about, you know, some of the most miserable times that I cast Myras are I haven't drawn any raiding parties. I've had to use preparations already.
Yep.
There's still Southsea Deckhands in my deck, and I haven't been pressuring my opponent. I'm going to be on a value plan. You know, Chef Nomi really changes the dynamic of how you Myras as well. You don't have to cast it early because you have such a big reload after the Myras. So life total control becomes pretty paramount in that regard.
I think that's the exact determining factor. Is it against Warrior, it becomes flipped. You don't want to play it as soon as you can. You want to play it as late as you're allowed to.
Yeah. By
being pressured by their health total. If they have a bunch of minions on board, very often you just have to let it rip early and pray that you draw Chef Nomi or Heist Baron Togwaggle or any of your big juicy late game bombs. But if they're not putting on too much pressure and you're using your removal cards, I suppose, like Eviscerate and Togwaggle, or Waggle Pick, sorry, then you have the liberty to go for that Myra's Unstable element a little bit later, and you have a higher chance of finding Chef Nomi.
Yeah, like how many bombs has your opponent shuffled into your deck in the Bomb Warrior matchup? That impacts a lot, I think, of when and how you Myras. Also, just Viper's posture in this one, he looks much more focused and less worried than in the other 3 games he's played, where his hand has just been kind of stranded. Just not really a lot going on. This hand has everything going on.
Yeah, I mean, Viper, for someone who is so reserved, really wears his emotions on his sleeve. Like, when he's on stage, you can see how heavily he's breathing and how much the nerves are getting to him. He's definitely got better at dealing with that as the year has gone on, but it affects him quite a lot. Whoa. This is a bold play.
Uses the Eviscerate over simply using the dagger.
Which says to me, probably quite an early Myra's is what we're looking at.
I think so. I think Viper's, thinking about all the situations, goes, you know what, I have High Spare and Togwaggle.
Yep.
So if I draw Miscreants, I have a fine push afterwards. If I draw Chef Nomi, great. And if I don't, I already have Waggle Pick, Leroy, and Shadow Step.
And this is what's so important about Rogue, is if we remember back to our interview with Hunter Ace after he won with Rogue the other day, he was saying right up until the end, he saw like 3 ways to win the game, and he didn't know which one to go for. So he tried to keep his options open as long as possible, which I think is what Viper is doing as well. He's getting damage to the face, so Leroy plus Shadow Steps is still a possibility with the Waggle Pick. He's now drawn High Spare and Togwaggle, so we could just see High Spare and Shadow Step, High Spare and Shadow Step, just try and get as many activations of that as possible. We could see prep Myra's into Chef Nomi as soon as possible. All are valid options.
Viper just lost his whole board.
As is oft the case.
And honestly, that Eviscerate, I think, is a pretty big blessing here, because he's going to run the Waggle Pick into a Harrison Jones. So, obviously you don't anticipate this happening every time, but it's happening here. And you have an Eviscerate now to kill the Harrison Jones.
That belongs in a museum.
But that is a concerning feeling now for Viper, where I feel like that early Myra's plan perhaps just went out the window a little bit. Raiding Party picked up, however, fantastic for Viper.
Yeah, this is exactly what he needs to be looking for here. Just any way to spend his mana effectively, because the cards he has in hand are all kind of late game cards he wants to save right at the end. But this is a way to spend his mana until he bridges the gap through to that Myra's. Tell me, Admirable, what's he thinking about
Weapons
playing
Project. I'm telling you, it's Weapons Project. You hit the armor button.
You're smiling right now. Does that
want
indicate
to hit the armor button, and I just feel like he's going to play Dr. Boom, and I disagree. I vehemently disagree with Dr. Boom in this spot.
Well, he's not slamming it, so clearly he's thinking about something else.
I have really liked a lot of Bozzzton's Warrior play. I will extremely disagree with the Dr. Boom here. You need life total. You're at 29 already. You have answers in your hand. You have 2 Warpaths you want to use. You have a ton of armor to gain before you don't. Oh, Bozzzton, you're going to get it! To that same effect, Viper has added in a High Spare and Togwaggle and a Chef Nomi, so there's a lot more push potential.
There is indeed. And there's also just cards like Leroy, Captain Greenskin, that he knows is very likely to be in hand now. Even just the small medium minions, like SI7 Agent, Life Drinkers, and the Evil Miscreants, you need to be able to fight back against that. And if you're playing...
2 Warpaths!
Yeah, no, that allows you to do that, but this is a turn where you have an empty board. That might never happen for the rest of the game. Seize the opportunity.
I disagree with you. I think he's got a lot of chance for it to happen for the rest of the game.
But this way, he does it earlier, so he gets more activations of a better hero power along the way.
I would argue that 2 armor is better currently than discovering a mech. I think that life total is the way that you get pushed out of this game a lot of times.
Yet again, I disagree with you. That's admirable. I think that discovering a mech here is perfect. He's at 29 health. Yes, the burst from hand is scary, but you need to be keeping board control. His hand does that decently, but this is a value-heavy rogue. You need to be having answers after answers after answers. That's what you're afraid of here, rather than the burst from hand.
you need to be able to pressure back.
That's part of it, definitely, but more importantly is just the best way to keep your armor total high is by removing the board. It's preemptively stopping the attacks.
Oh, I love that fuse thing.
Defend the gates!
Waggle pick taken out, so Viper no longer has access to Waggle's pick.
I disagree with you.
But they're both gone.
You're wrong.
I didn't disagree with you. I said I would argue the hero power was better.
Oh, look at this. His hero power gains 7 armor, often considered a larger number than 2.
He also took extra damage last turn from the Waggle pick.
He did, but he still ended up destroying it. The greenskin would have hit one of the other ones along the way. Or the other one, I should say.
I guess that's true. The greenskin hitting a weapons project and then having a deadly poison might actually result in more damage.
Yeah.
Huh.
So many options.
I mean, the weapons project is still going to be getting it a good amount of damage here with the deadly poison thrown on it.
This guy's toast.
Either way,
Here we go.
There's no way you can mitigate all damage here completely.
Too soon.
But now, the dumping of his hand earlier on is coming into fruition here for Viper.
Finds Miscreant and Chef Nomi. Major pickups for Viper. Now
These are huge.
That's the benefit you get by having Raiding Party, though, is you get to draw 6 cards out of your deck. 6 specific cards. It really increases the density of your Myra's Unstable Element when you're able to use Raiding Party before you use Myra's Unstable Element.
This hand is insane from Viper. The only thing he's missing is another Shadow Step for Chef Nomi, or arguably an Edwin, I suppose, for one big threat. But both Miscreants with the Heist Baron, Nomi and a Shadow Step to survive 2 brawls. Bozzzton only has 1. He has 1 brawl.
And he
in
just
his deck.
threw it. I was about to talk about how fortunate it is for Bozzzton that he drew a Brawl in this situation. He's going to need Brawl. He probably needs a second Brawl.
And this is where things get interesting, because Chef Nomi is incredibly powerful, obviously, in the amount of power that you can put on the board. It does, however, mean that you are going to be taking unreactive turns on the turns that you play it. So maybe for Bozzzton, if Chef Nomi does come down here, we could possibly see push the damage phase, Brawl, one of your minions survives, Dynamatic just to get more stats on the board. He could hopefully beat Viper down here, especially if he finds a couple of bomb cards.
And so for Viper, if you're going to play Chef Nomi, which I think you're definitely going to do,
Yeah,
I think you're letting the backstab rip.
I agree.
And the Shadow Step is really, to me, the thing to consider. You have to calculate your time perfectly to make sure that you have time to play another one, and not just die to counter pressure. You know, that's I think that's the big benefit Bozzzton really gets from the Dr. Boom. He's able to pressure.
And so that's why Viper is killing off everything he can.
Yeah, I'm curious if you kill this 3-4. I really am.
Pretty sure you do, right? Because you just want to avoid magnetic damage coming through.
You're going to take the damage anyway, but you have a lot of damage to deliver, but you got a lot of damage in hand. So I think you take care of the 3-4.
Like next turn, he has Leroy plus Life Drinker for an extra 9 damage, even if the 36 on board is not already enough. Oh, sorry, plus the damage from the weapon, so 40 damage. Which means there's only one option on this turn for Bozzzton. He has to Brawl.
Yes, and so the question is, how do you set up the Brawl to then be able to recover on the following turn? And frankly, I'm not sure that you can.
So is he in such a miserable position that he has to go Dynamatic first and then win with the Dynamatic?
I'm genuinely considering that, because I think you need to get some damage in. You can survive one hit of the Chef Nomi from Bozzzton's perspective. Not
What,
this
of
one.
all of these? Not
this
all of
one.
these. No, you cannot.
It's the follow-up one, because you're going to have the shield block access next turn, and you're going to have the Warpath plus the Dynamatic to be able to wipe out one single minion.
Okay. Maybe that happens. It's possible. A Mega Assembly helps. Maybe you can hit a Ziliax or something.
Okay,
for a bit of extra
so
stall.
Assembly, find a 1-drop, play the 1-drop, and Brawl.
Okay. If he does get a 1-drop, I fully agree that he should do that. Well, but I guess he wants the 1 extra damage here from the hero power, just to try and go for a lethal.
I think that's what he's thinking about.
I think that's fine, actually. Every point of damage matters here.
Viper going to 10. and Viper will be going to 7 on the following turn. So Bozzzton would need 4 damage.
So hero power plus a bomb drawn from the deck is just lethal on the following turn.
Oh, but
and therefore,
but the
Viper is
Trigger
playing
can shut
around
it down.
that. Yeah.
Wow. So now at 28, the Warpath would clear off 9 of the damage, and you're staring at 30. So you can't do that.
Has Ziliax been played so far?
Ziliax has not been played this game.
You don't have the mana, obviously, to clear and Ziliax.
Ziliax will often be enough to just sustain the board pressure. I mean, Viper can't play Leroy in this spot.
Yeah.
You would have to trade off the Life Drinker.
Oh,
This is weird.
oh he
Clockwork
gets the
Goblin.
bomb.
And Explodinator. Can he live for a turn?
Clockwork Goblin plus double Warpath deals 4 damage to his opponent. He can't fit in the hero power in addition to that, though. And obviously that's just less than Clockwork Goblin anyway. He can't activate the Goblin bombs off the Explodinator and the Clockwork Goblin. He's got the juice, he just doesn't have the time.
I don't think he can live. Has to be Ziliax.
Magnetize it onto the Clockwork Goblin, I guess.
I think you want the surprise factor. I think if this is a Ziliax, Ziliax no attacks situation.
And that's just it, right? The damage is there with the Leroy to close things out.
36.
A staggeringly close game 2 there, but it turns out that the power of Rogue in Specialist shines through. Being able to transition over to his tertiary deck with Chef Nomi in there works out gorgeously for Viper. And it's got to be said as well, at the end, I think that was some really nice navigation from him there to both apply the pressure he needed to close out the game, but also protect his own life total. Getting that Life Drinker in there was really crucial.
It definitely was. And you start to see how the pieces come together and what Bozzzton's counterattack plan was. If he anticipates a Mars Unstable Element coming in and a Chef Nomi's to follow, he has to be able to punch through. Yes. That's the importance of having the Dr. Boom loaded up, is being able to deliver that counter pressure.
So would you say, therefore, that the Dr. Boom on 7 was the best way to anticipate that?
I mean, you'd have to go back and review that for a long way through. I personally would not have done that.
Okay.
And I'm curious how it would have panned out. Either way, it's a 1-1 tied-up series here for Bozzzton versus Viper. Bozzzton looked strong in that one with the counterpunch, but Viper just had the gas to get it done. We're going to come back and find out if this tertiary deck from Viper can get it done with Chef Nomi cooking up some surprises.
The cards see a heart that is stony, and a totem that's all kinda bony. This witch in such danger will soon be no stranger, 'cause she's gonna be our new crony. We welcome you into this room, and we promise your enemies doom. Just one more who's coming. The last one I summon is a fella who makes things go boom.
Mazahidul Islam. I go by Muzzy in game. My username, as you know, my first name is Mazahidul. It's kind of difficult to say for some people, and every time someone calls you, they're gonna have to say, "Hey, Mazahidul." That's long, and you don't want to say that. My friend gave me a nickname, like, "Hey Muzz, hey Muzzy." So I sort of just took that, and my name's Muzzy. I took a look at the list of players. Some of them have been more focused on streaming, I would say, in these past few years. I've participated at the highest levels of competition that they might not have appeared in. I'm the player to beat in my group, for sure. The thing that I most look forward to about competing in Grandmasters is the thrill of the competition. It's really why I play Hearthstone. It's what I've enjoyed doing for the past 3 or 4 years, and it's what I'll continue to enjoy doing, hopefully. I think Hearthstone Instinct is definitely my greatest skill set. I think that if I took a break for a while and didn't play the game and came back to new cards, I think I could pilot a new deck fairly well, fairly quickly. People would always mention the term burnout to me. Burnout, burnout, burnout. I didn't know what it was. I would constantly play Hearthstone all the time. I definitely want to have more titles and
put my name in Hearthstone history.
It's the European Grandmasters for Hearthstone, and we are getting into game number 3 here between Bozzzton and Viper. Viper just tied things up thanks to his tertiary deck and the extra gas he gets at the end of the game. And so now we're going to find out if Bozzzton can get this done or if Viper can make the comeback here. Important to note that Viper was 0-3 in game score going into game number 4, where he received his first coin of Grandmasters and sailed to victory.
Yeah, it's interesting how that turns out. I would still say he piloted that very well. It was a good analysis of the different win conditions that Rogue has, especially when you put in Heist Baron Togwaggle and Chef Nomi, and realizing that the most powerful one available to him was Chef Nomi in that instance. And I would agree with that assessment. I think it was a good realization that damage was unlikely to get there, and so overwhelming board pressure in the late game was the best way to go.
Yeah, I agree. Something that I really look at in that game is the Chef Nomi pressure and how you counter it. And something I've noticed over and over again is when players are going for Chef Nomi turns is, as you'd mentioned, you have unresponsive turns at that point, which means the fatigue damage is going to set in. How many turns do you need and how much damage do you need to deliver if you anticipate that happening? That's a thought to me where that's a practice point you have to have. You'd have to have experience and have played through that and really understand how that matchup is going to pan out in that situation to get it done. It seems like a very difficult thing to do, and I think that's something that Warrior players are going to have to look out for in the coming weeks.
As we jump into game the 3rd here between Viper and Bozzzton, a somewhat interesting mulligan here.
Yeah, as we come off of game the 2nd and game Junior in our previous ones.
That's Game Boy to you. He didn't go to child school for 6 years to be Game Junior. But yeah, the prep being kept off the play here, sorry, rather than the coin, does make some good amount of sense, because obviously if you find the raiding party, you are over the moon, and even if not, you can use it, even just prep nothing to activate the Miscreant on turn 3, even though that's obviously a pretty sad scenario to end up in. Or you can get Myra's Unstable Element and just let it rip nice and early.
Side benefit, you don't have to ever worry about accidentally misclicking prep and coin.
I feel like that's an admirable exclusive consideration there.
Amen, brother. Ooh, okay.
This hand is spicy.
All right. We're going down the crazy train again. You dagger up.
Yep.
On turn 3.
You prep Deadly Poison.
Nope, you don't go crazy.
Okay, I agree. I would
On
not
turn 4. You don't go crazy. On turn 5. You prep, you poison, you Myra's, you Edwin. You don't want to do that because you go into fatigue too early.
That doesn't work out. You can't fit in the poison. You only go prep Myra's Edwin because you're at 5 mana. It's 2 and then 3.
You're right.
Usually equals 5.
So kind of talking about that, now that we're done exploring dumb lines, the turn ideally for Viper to empty the deck is going in to turn 7 or on 9 mana. So that you can prep the Myras and play the Chef Nomi in the same turn.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So those are the 2 things I'm looking at.
To be perfectly honest, with this hand from Viper, he can let rip with this Myra's whenever he wants now. I would say, you know, when it serves a purpose. Just going for it now when it disrupts your dagger turns. When he has the mana, I really would not hate him going for it. I think the best way to do it is to set up a big Edwin. As you said, turn 5 seems like a good time for me, especially if he picks up something else to make the Edwin even juicier.
The big Edwin with the Myras at the same time.
Right, exactly, because you're drawing through your whole deck, which sets up for Nomi, and it's going to bait out the removal.
So that's like a reason to not start poking this Town Criers. You're going to be setting yourself into fatigue. Why take the extra damage of just hitting this twice when maybe you have a minion cleared off?
That's true. I think it's also the consideration that he could actually very possibly go prep Deadly Poison Edwin here, because the only way that that could then be cleared off on the following turn would be exactly Weapons Project plus Shield Slam. And he's going for it.
Yeah, I like that.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure there's one answer to this.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I think because Coin Militia Commander doesn't
kill the Town Crier, so that way Militia Commander doesn't.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, Bozzzton is, to put it unofficially, in Trub. I think here you're going to have to clockwork and coin the Eternium Rovers. That way you can get a point of damage down and use Militia Commander. I think that's your hope to fight back against this.
And that would get him out of Trub, you're saying?
It might get him out of Trub, because Viper still has 3 cards in hand.
Yeah.
It could very easily be a backstab situation. It could very easily be an eviscerate situation. It could be a waggle pick situation where some weird things happen. Like, you can find yourself getting snowballed out of the game from this point. So I think here for Bozzzton, you have to take that desperate measure.
Oh, he has to start taking desperate measures. Like, he doesn't know that the hand is as good for Viper as we can see it is. But even just this Edwin smacking face every turn, a 6/6 alone, if he can't find an answer for it, will get Viper in a very good position.
What now?
The alternative for Bozzzton is just not good. The other thing I was looking at was Eternium Rover Warpath into the Militia Commander because it conserves the coin. The thing about it is I like playing the Clockwork Goblin with the Eternium Rover because this potentially it soaks damage, I think, potentially, and it also conserves Warpath in that instance.
Yeah, allows you to go Militia Commander plus the Eternium Rover, as you pointed out, to take out the Edwin, which will be very important because Viper's hand outside of this Edwin, until the Myra stuff comes down, is looking fairly underwhelming. And
Viper's actually got an interesting turn here as well, where
So many
attacking
options.
into the Eternium Rover might be close to the same thing as attacking into the Clockwork Goblin with the dagger. Because the reason that the reason that Bozzzton set these up was 2 Militia Commander down.
Yes.
The Edwin. So if you attack the Eternium over here, you actually save 2 points of health, and you shred more armor overall to prevent from Shield Slam.
Does allow them to go Wrench Caliber, which
if your opponent has take 12, that's good.
Yeah, it has positives and minuses there.
Interesting.
That is actually an interesting point. I shouldn't sound so surprised there, Admirable, that you made an interesting point, but it's a good one nonetheless.
Wow! I can see the hands face up. He cannot.
That was the goal read.
That is so good.
That was a good spot, and an excellent spot from Viper there, realizing, you know, I may as well take less damage because it's probably going to come down to Myra's, Chef Nomi, where fatigue really matters. And the Edwin dies no matter what.
Wow, that is so good.
So now that we're in this position for Bozzzton, the 2 options are open to him. Which one does he take, Wrench Caliber or Militia Commander?
I think in this spot, you might need to capitalize on your chance to win. And I think your chance to win is loading bombs into a deck in the face of your opponent having a Myra's.
Okay.
And it stings.
The only armor gain he has is Dr. Boom, which is still a couple turns away.
It stings. But remember, Viper didn't play Evil Miscreant.
Yeah.
He hasn't played Raiding Party. He's only got 3 cards. Oh,
wow.
Boy.
That is a top deck there for Viper.
A huge draw for Viper.
To no good.
And Bozzzton, did you see his face? Yeah, that's how it feels right now.
The response to which is, well, maybe you should be playing Rogue. If you're annoyed that I'm doing gross stuff, why aren't you playing it? I can respect the Goblin Lucky over the Kobold Lucky here. Generally against Warrior, you want to use it on a minion that can already attack to get damage through to face, rather than getting the benefit of Rush, which may seem counterintuitive because you're kind of foregoing half the benefit. But I think this is a very nice way to go about it.
It's a bootleg Acarus better.
It's one way of looking at it.
For Bozzzton, I firmly believe this is a double Warpath turn. Get a 3rd bomb in the deck.
Is it ever a Militia Commander turn? You take more damage, but you seize board control somewhat. What are you expecting your opponent to do on the following turn? What's bad for you? That you which card is more likely to be good on the next turn out of Warpath or Militia Commander?
Militia Commander, for certain.
They're more likely to play one thing.
Well, they have 3 cards in hand.
Yeah.
They just played their top deck card. They used another poison.
Okay.
So I think you are free to use the Omega Assembly here first, because Dynomatic is just a better option.
Scrap Hounds, well, and Bronze Gatekeeper both have their merits.
Yeah, I'm looking at Scrap Hound to load up on the Dr. Boom later. If you draw Ziliax, you effectively get like a double effect from it. You get the attack on the armor and the lifesteal.
That's enough for Bozzzton.
I don't mind the Bronze Gatekeeper, though. It's kind of interesting because that could potentially soak 2 attacks from a Nomi in the later stage.
Especially if you magnetize it on, like that on a Ziliax with the Divine Shield as well.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's potentially 3 of the elementals having to attack in. Or more. Yeah, 3 of them having to attack in.
So Viper, I think, very interested in the Myras right now.
Absolutely.
Healthy life total. He gets a 3/3 down in the meantime, draws 8 cards and sets it for a Nomi. I mean, you're just not getting better than this.
I mean, he's closing in on lethal right now. If he went for the Kobold Lackey to face, he could find, like, Eviscerate. Oh no, you already used 1 prep. But either way, he just wants to be letting this rip here. Bozzzton is devastated.
That's like all the damage cards.
That is all the damage cards. He didn't find a Shadow Step to go with the Nomi, but he's just not going to need it. And this is it. This is the 3-pronged attack of Rogue. They can go for late game, they can go for Nomi, and they can just go for damage in the early game to close things out.
If Bozzzton does not go above 12 next turn, he's dead.
I wonder.
Yup.
And that's with clearing off the minion. So if he doesn't clear off the minion, that means he has to go to 16?
How does 12 damage come in?
Leroy Eviscer... Oh, he's
It's
1
10.
mana off. Excuse me.
So 10 is the point he needs to get to, including clearing off the minion. Which is obviously possible with Militia Commander hero power.
I must choose.
I'm very afraid.
Defend the gates.
So Bozzzton, he knows the numbers. Leroy Shadow Step is not possible on 7 mana. So I believe just going for hero power over Weapons Project is the way to go, because there are few scenarios in which you die. This, however, is one of the scenarios where even though you're not dead right now, you're dead.
You're dead. Viper, a fire start in this game, ends up utilizing the prep for tempo on the early stages rather than trying to attempt to prep Myras later on.
Yeah.
Rips the Myras on turn 6 with the Nomi already in hand. Dust your hands off. GG.
Yeah, you are not coming back from this one. And it's really showing the power that of Myras in this matchup. That is the key card that you are always looking for against Warrior, especially when you have the Chef Nomi
Also just
into your deck.
Utilization of the side decks in Specialist here. Yep. I mean, this is a choice that you see on ladder sometimes, but it can really come back to bite you. When you know exactly what game plan you're going to be facing, or likely to be facing, that changes everything.
And this is interesting to see the difference between Viper's fantastic gameplay here to get himself the victory and Hunter Ace's the other day. 2 very different styles of play. Hunter Ace going for the damage. Viper always just relying on the power of Chef Nomi in the late game to get him through. And I mean, hey, he put it in there in his tertiary deck for exactly this reason, and it's paying off in spades.
What a wonderful start to the series and a wonderful finish as well. Just getting to see the full depth of what the decks have to offer in terms of their game plans and how they attack and how the board's controlled in all the situations. You know, Viper's game 3 was about as good as you're going to get in a Rogue versus Warrior game for that one. It sounds like we have Viper ready for an interview. Viper, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Congratulations on your win here in your second match of the day. Talk to me about this Rogue deck and some of the tech choices you have. You've included Walk the Plank in the main, and your side decks are quite interesting as well. Walk me through your preparation process.
I think my preparation process, in the end, I was more or less convinced on Thijs being... Okay, Thijs is most likely going to bring Mage. I think he likes the deck. He's been performing well with it, playing on ladder, streaming with it. So that's why I have one of Walk the Plank in the main deck. I think it's more efficient than Zap, and even against Warriors, sometimes they have those Clockwork Goblin Celiacs turn 8, so I just want to like remove a minion, or Rogue Mirror sometimes. There's an Advin, and even though you can Zap it, Rogue just makes another Advin, so I just prefer Walk the Plank over the one of Zap, and yeah, I guess there goes that. Then preparation-wise, I thought Bozzzton is going to bring Rogue himself. I was like kind of convinced on that. It's either going to be Rogue or maybe as well Mage. I was surprised by him bringing Warrior. That's why I didn't have the Nomi in my main deck. Otherwise, when Warrior matchup is a probability, I really like that card.
So I want to ask, less with respect to the tech cards in your Rogue, but bringing Rogue overall, with the majority of players going with Warrior, is it just the fact that you are such a Rogue specialist over the history of Hearthstone that you wanted to bring it? Or do you believe it's the most powerful deck at the moment?
I think, especially looking at how like all the lineups, how what everyone submitted turned out, is Rogue is probably one of the less polarized decks, kind of as Bomb Warrior is. So I didn't expect as many Warriors, to be honest. I thought more people gonna bring like a Mage deck that's some cards off being optimized because it's relatively new, and I kind of just wanted to abuse that playing Rogue myself, I guess. And also, I don't feel the Warrior matchup is as terrible as everyone makes it up to be. I mean, most of the Warriors, or let's say, I think a couple of them were playing one-off Brawl. If we have the main deck Nomi, for example, they're just going to lose X% to the Nomi play, then they're going to lose X% to the Advent play because they just don't really have a good answer to that. They just fall behind in tempo or have to waste weapons projects or things like that. And also the weapons project is kind of like a two-edged sword because you kill the Waggle Pig, but you give Rogue a 2/3 weapon, and they have Deadly Poison and Captain Greenskin in the deck, so I don't think the matchup is that polarized towards Warrior, and Warrior usually doesn't have some kind of better secondary or tertiary deck against Rogue, and Rogue, I don't know, just ups the percent against Warrior by a lot. I think I didn't do a really good job in building my side decks this week, to be honest. I think anti-mage, the anti-mage deck kind of should have been having Fairy Dragons, for example. That card is really good. And anti-warrior deck should probably play Henchkin Burglars, maybe another Shark, or just go for the Sheem combo. Because if Bomb Warriors run LX as well, then you kind of just die going for the Myra's Nomi stuff or the Myra's Torquoggle, like win the game slowly. If you have one scheme, you don't just instantly draw the bomb. So yeah, I think there could be like 1-2 cards better in side decks, and I really like the options of Rogue side decks.
You had mentioned that the Rogue deck was less polarized in its matchups and in its play. Going forward, you're going to be able to swap your decks around accordingly to your opponents and just what's developing in the metagame. Would you say that you prefer a less polarized style of play, or is that just going to depend on the situation and the right time? Like, what do you prefer to use in a tournament setting?
I think especially in those settings where you know your opponents, it just depends on how well do you know them, how well do you think you can predict them. And if you are not sure what they're going to bring, then bringing probably one of the big three, which is Mage, Rogue, Warrior, is like this kind of safe pick, I guess. And then you decide on which one is the other going to bring. Like, do you expect Mage of the other one? Then I probably bring Rogue. Do you expect the other guy to bring Warrior? Then you probably don't bring the Rogue because it is slightly unfavored going into the first game. And then sometimes some people are just known for those pocket pick picks, right? I think Casey mentioned he was very sure about Pavel bringing Nomi Priest, for example. Then he just submits the Alec Bomb Warrior main deck, no Omega Assemblies, for example, which is like really targeting that specific matchup. It's just not good on average, I think. So, yeah, I don't know. Just gonna depend from week to week, to be honest.
All right. Well, you got your first win here at Grandmasters, up to a 1-1 record, and big congratulations on that one because it was looking like it could have been close there. But thank you very much for your time, Viper, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks.
He's a smart guy.
He's an incredibly smart guy. Like, Viper will talk about Hearthstone for as long as you let him. I remember when we were doing Summer Championships last year, we were having breakfast together one day, and I just said, Auctioneer versus Sprint in Rogue, and then he just started going on for like 45 minutes on how Sprint is the worst thing you can possibly do. Gadgets and Auctioneer is the truth in Miracle Rogue. He's a real purist. He likes Rogue a lot.
I can appreciate that, and I can attest to that fact as well. Viper loves to share as much information as he can about Hearthstone. He loves talking about the game, and that's been a big part of his stream, is that he just shares a lot of that information.
That's it. Why he's one of my absolute favorite streamers at the moment.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our second match, which means we have 4 more, and our match of the day is the one that's coming up. We are looking at Orange taking on Hunter Race, still seeking a Hunter victory here in our opening week of Grandmasters. Don't go anywhere.